Hey everyone, this is Soul with another video, and today I'm kind of live right now, but today I'm going to go over 24 predictions for the 10.0 expansion, because I love being wrong about things, and I like people looking at what I think and being like, wow, that's totally not going to happen. But if you don't mind, the advertising things are going to be there. Like I said, we're live, so I might break for interruptions with chat. But what I have here, right on this guy right here, I have a whole bunch of predictions that I made, and the intention is to create a bingo card. I'm gonna have a bingo card set up for Tuesday morning at 9 a.m. Pacific. We're gonna be here on Coffee with Soul over here at the Twitch channel, and we're going to observe and watch and react and talk smack and all sorts of stuff, and it should be fun. So I invite you to join me there. But until then, I'm gonna be talking about some of the best things that I've seen from, I guess, the discourse, from conversations that I've been seeing all over the place with regards to, hey, what might be coming, what's expected, what's not expected. And we'll be going over that. So I'm going to try to split this off and section these off for people who just want to like read through the thing and be like, okay, yeah, he's totally wrong, bye. But I appreciate you staying and sticking around with me. So let's go on this journey together. So number one, old expansion is always going to be added to Chromie time. So to be precise, this is like a really controversial thing that I've seen a number of times, and I've made it myself, where when the next expansion launches, or like the pre-patch or something like that, Shadowlands is going to get thrown into the bucket of sorts. The whole the whole level 10 through 50 experience, where you choose the expansion that you want. Now, whether or not it's going to be like the new required thing to do for new players, I don't think that'd be a good idea, but that's not important. But what would be really controversial would be if we got squished again down to level 50. And so again, we go up to level 60. We maybe get like some new snazzy things and all that stuff. And I guess to kind of try to keep it clean, the abilities and upgrades or whatever that we earned from levels 50 to 60, because there were some new abilities that were given back and so on and so forth, those are just going to be like somehow thrown into the 10 through 50 experience. So as we're leveling from level 10 to 50, we're going to get like that much more stuff. It's not that much more, but we're going to get that much more stuff. And we're going to go through that loop forever. So when expansion 11 comes out, the 10.0 experience is going to get thrown into the 10 through 50 experience. We're going to level from level 50 to 60 again, which means the item levels that we're familiar with right now, we're going to be really familiar with them in 2 years, in 4 years, and so on and so forth, until this game shuts down. And as scary as that sounds, it's almost like this was a door or a box that Blizzard opened that they just can't close anymore. And I feel like that's the cleanest way for WoW to proceed for the foreseeable future, unless they undo Chromie time and they do something else entirely, which I don't predict. I think that would be like hugely disruptive. Now, I do feel like there should be more stuff done with Chromie time to make it better. But in the meantime, I think that whole flow of how that's going to work is going to almost like fundamentally change, in that we're going to be squished every expansion. I mean, it solves some things. We don't have to worry about stat squishes anymore, because we're always going to be squished every couple of years. And it also introduces that sort of familiarity. Like, cool, it's the third season, so my item level is expected to be like 270 something by the time we're done, or something like that. Having that sort of familiarity might be psychologically better, but I totally get if players are also going to feel like, well, I feel like I'm not progressing either, because the numbers, they keep kind of going back, every expansion. So this would be hugely controversial. I just see anything else being really, really messy. Like, okay, 10 through 50 is like everything but Shadowlands. 50 through 60 is Shadowlands, which means everyone is forced to do Shadowlands. And the opposite, and on the other hand, it could have been something like, okay, 10 through, instead of 10 through 50, it's going to be 10 through 60 is the whole bucket now. But that's going to mean the things that we get, it might be kind of like spread out a little bit more, or maybe not. It's kind of hard to, like, that feels a little bit messier, but that could be something that happens too, where that bucket just keeps growing, sort of. But I don't know. It just feels like there's going to be like bloat or something that happens there. But anyway, that would be. I don't think I'm not sure if I have it on here, because people mention it, but it didn't really take off as very popular. But one of the other alternatives that chat's bringing up is the possibility of there being no more leveling, which I think is grossly irresponsible. Like, I talked about this a little bit before, that not having leveling means that leveling is going to be replaced with something else. It means that in order to access endgame content, such as dungeons, raids, and so on and so forth, there would likely be something else to replace that. I doubt that it's Blizzard's intention to be like, oh yeah, just go ahead and bypass all the story stuff, forget all that. Who needs it? Just go ahead and, when you start this new expansion thing, you just walk into a raid in the previous expansion's gear and expect to like do well. No, you're going to get smacked. So I would wonder, like, what would be the alternative? What would be the other barriers? It could be reputation. It could be quest gates. It could be other things. And, I said this before, so I'm not going to touch on it too much. It would be removing leveling for the sake of removing leveling. Because I don't know what the benefit would be. And maybe I need to listen more. I think that would be it. I need, instead of just being like, no, this isn't going to work, I need to listen more, because I just haven't really seen enough to convince myself to at least, or to even understand what it is that the removing of levels after level 60, how would that benefit us, either in the next expansion or in expansions afterwards? Because I think long term too, if there's going to be no more leveling period, it's like, so am I just going to be able to walk anywhere where I feel like? What's going to be like the difference between power as we move from expansion to expansion? Is there going to be any sort of difference? And it's hard to say. I'm not sure. But for now, let's move on. Number 2, hints at 2 major arcs. By this, I'm thinking about Battle for Azeroth, which did have 2 major arcs. There was the faction war, and there was all the old god stuff, all the tentacle fun time. And I feel strongly that there were 2 major, BFA could have been 2 expansions. BFA could have been the faction war, and there could have been something else entirely that all had to do with Ashara and Xal'atath and N'Zoth and whoever it is that I missed, all the old god cool stuff. There could have been 2 separate things, and I think that would have been, I think that would have been really cool. I say this very often, that patch 8.2.5, the conclusion of the faction war where Saurfang got blasted by Sylvanas, that could have been like, there could have been a raid that preceded that or something like that. And we could have had something really epic. And if it stopped there, then that would have felt like a kind of complete expansion. There could have been so much more that was done just for the faction war. Like, doing all the weird, stupid shit that Sylvanas was doing. That could have been probably made into its own dungeons or raids or whatever, instead of some of the old god stuff that we got from those dungeons and raids. And on top of that, we could have gotten more exposition. We could have gotten all sorts of like cutscenes and little scenarios where maybe we got to like either watch Sylvanas as she's speaking with someone mysterious, or she's alluding to all these different things instead of us being totally in the dark about stuff. I think it would have made a big difference with that sort of experience. Same thing with the old gods. Now, I don't have very strong opinions about the old god stuff because I never really cared about them anyway, but a lot of folks did want there to be a more full story that's told that's based on the old gods, instead of just, even though N'Zoth was kind of in the background for many, many years, all of a sudden, boom, he gets shoved into the limelight, and then blow, he gets finished off just like that. And so there's a lot of criticism over that. My fear of Tenno is that they're going to do a repeat of that. Shadowlands did not do that. Shadowlands did stay consistent with its story. Legion stayed, for the most part, consistent with its story. Mechagon was kind of a weird distraction, but it wasn't that far off of a distraction. If Shadowlands was left to develop the way that it wanted to, that could have also have had a small distraction. But I think BFA was split too far down the middle. I'm a little worried that they may do that again, strictly because of fear. Irrational, whatever fear. Because there's a lot of folks that have been, during League season, folks have been kind of split between Dragon Isles, Light and Void, Infinite Dragonflight, which I guess has to do with Dragon Isles too. And so the worry that I have is that they're going to take one of those arcs and make it into like a patch. And I don't want that to be a patch. I'd rather it be its full-on story that just takes its time to tell itself. Like, for example, if we're going to hear more about Light and Void, we're probably going to hear more about Alarian Terrellian. I'd love to get like a return of like audio dramas or that sort of formats. Just a bunch of stuff to just fill in holes in lore, stuff that's provided for everyone for free. Hey, and its own separate experience because it's a big deal. We're dealing with old characters once again, and I'd like to see conclusive things that conclusive story bits instead of like the teases that we have been seeing with Sylvanas over the past couple of years. And I'm pretty, and part of me wants to think that we'll hold off on Light versus Void because we're going to deal with another Windrunner. Great! Blizz! And so that's my fear. Number 3, more accessible solo content. Now this is vague. This is very, very vague, and I shouldn't have been so vague about that. Maybe I'll change this around. I feel like Shadowlands did more for solo content than pretty much any other expansion before it. And that might sound horrifying to people because of what we got. Because not everyone likes the Covenants, not everyone cares for the Covenant mini games and the Anima Farm and so on and so forth. But I'd love to see just more, a bit more focus. And that's not to say, oh, we're going to remove Mythic Plus, or we're going to not care about raids and dungeons and PvP and stuff. It feels like despite what some folks are seeing on Wowhead and Twitter and whatnot, people do leave the company, but there's a lot of folks that are coming in too. A lot of folks are coming in, folks are being promoted. It feels like a new generation of WoW developer is starting to rise up and is starting to become part of the decision-making process or part of the principal design process. And Shadowlands was a really big step towards making a game that feels like it has more stuff for everybody. Torghast was not universally enjoyed. The Covenants weren't universally enjoyed, but that's sort of the thing. Not everything is for everyone. Mythic Raids aren't for everyone. Mythic Plus isn't for everybody. But I do like how they leaned more towards the solo player. I'm not even going to say casual. I'm going to try not to say that word anymore. There's been more that's been geared towards that sort of audience, and I think that's been a fantastic thing. I think that I'd like to think that that's been received pretty well. So I want to see more of that. I know I'm not being specific about it. I think I might talk about one or two things, specific things in this list. But I guess examples of solo content would be like, let's say if they wanted to do legacy raid content, that the multiplier for legacy raid content is greater. You know how like right now we can like one-shot things in Cataclysm, and that's kind of how it was for a while. But once we get to like, I guess Legion or so, then it's like, oh, okay, I'm not killable, but these are total damage sponges. So I think by more accessible, maybe if legacy loot mode or legacy mode was made into like a thing that people can easily jump into for their sort of gameplay kind of thing. It's like they don't want to feel like particularly challenged, but at least challenged enough to feel things. That'd be great. It'd be great if there were other things to do out in the world that might not necessarily be reputation, but just more things to immerse people into world. I know I'm being really vague about this. I have no idea if I'm going to be able to nail this in a bingo card or not, but I'll give it a shot. All right, let's move on to number 4 though. A longer and crazier high-res intro. So Shadowlands had a high-res introduction. It had a couple of commercials and trailers that had high-res looking stuff. We got to see the Covenant leaders, minus the Primus, be a whole part of that. But nothing since. We ain't seen jack shit. Meanwhile, during BFA, we had multiple high-res stuff. You know, the whole Saurfang saga. So where they been? Where they at? Where's our movies at? Part of me is thinking, okay, maybe the intro for expansion 10 is going to be particularly long, or that expansion 10 is going to be filled with more high-res stuff. It's going to have that BFA sort of feel, which is great. People loved. I'd like to think that people loved the cinematics that came from that. Maybe not so much. It's like, more orcs, great. But I would love to see like others. I'm super excited to see what is going to be shown in the intro, because it's pretty much guaranteed that that's going to be high res. Like, what sort of characters are we going to see? Probably dragons. Yeah. But who else? I'd be really interested to. I'm really interested in finding out. Number 5, cross-faction guilds will not be confirmed. I think this is one of the few negatives that I have on this list. Now, I'm a big fan. I've been a big proponent of dissolving the faction divide. Cross-faction everything. From doing instant stuff to PvP to raids to dungeons and communities and guilds and whatnot. In patch 9.2.5, we're going to get indoor instance content, and we're going to get communities as cross-faction features. I think those are big steps. But for them to say, yes, we are going to go cross-faction guilds and go all the way for expansion 10, I don't think they're going to do that, because we haven't even done the first thing. That's all. I think Blizzard's going to implement what they're going to do in 9.2.5, and then watch, and then wait. And maybe their accountants will also watch and wait. I don't know. And see how players respond to it. And from there, it'll kind of decide, Blizzard can kind of decide. I mean, personally, I think they're leaning towards going all the way. But I think what they're looking for is resistance. If they're looking for, like, big problems. And so I have a feeling that they're not going to do it yet. But they might talk about it. They might say, hey, you know what? We want, this is something that we're going to. I don't think they're going to say it's something that we want to do. They're going to say it's something that we're going to observe. We're going to watch and see how players react to it. And we'll decide from there what we're going to do next. On the back end, though, I have a feeling that while they're not going to start working on it, they're leaning towards, yeah, we're going to do it. Because I think we're starting to go in that, if we're going to start going in that direction, we're going to have to go all the way at some point. So I think it's going to happen. It's just that they're not going to satisfy people by saying, oh, yeah, we're going to do it. Doubt. Big doubt. Number 6. There is or there isn't a BlizzCon. Rumors have been flying lately, man. Rumors have been flying pretty hard that, oh my god, there might be a BlizzCon. I saw the and I helped contribute to it. I talked about it in the weekly the other day, that there's like rumors, people are talking, blah blah blah. So I fell into the fear. I booked a room, not knowing, or kind of with with the expectation that no one else I know is going to go. Not guildmates, not friends. My wife will probably come with me because she's such a big fan of me. But I think we'll find out either that day on Tuesday that there is going to be a BlizzCon. And if we don't find out then a couple days later or so, or heck, maybe even in the next couple days, we'll learn that there won't be. But we might find out on Tuesday, which is kind of scary. I still don't know if I'm going to go. Dee asks me all the time. She's like, so I booked this hotel for us. Are we going to go? I'm like, okay, well, I made sure we can cancel, right? But yeah, I'm personally, I'm not sure if I'm going to go because, you know, I watch the news. I'm seeing how things are going and I'm like, I don't know. But I do miss it too. I do miss that energy. But if no one I know is going to go, that's going to feel really awkward for me because for me, the BlizzCon experience wasn't the BlizzCon experience. It was the guild experience. So if no guild mates are going to be there, then I'm going to be like, I don't know. And also after last time, I'm going to be a bit more wary about which guild mates I do go with because I didn't have the best experience. So guess we'll find out. All right, number 7. This is more hope than anything. I got caught up in my own hype. I'm sorry, but I'm gonna force it on you. It feels like I feel somewhat vindicated after the end of Shadowlands that excuse me, that the end of Shadowlands is the end of like this whole saga of WoW that hopefully will introduce this sort of soft lore reset. We can kind of start at the bottom again, kind of like what we did with Miss Pandaria. Kind of, sort of. I mean, that started off with a straight up battle, straight up land war. But I feel like after 17 years, that something absolutely revolutionary has got to happen. And the last time we really saw this was, in fact, with Miss Pandaria, with the full abandonment of the talent system. So that was a combat-based system. That was a gameplay sort of thing that had to do with the primary way that we enjoy WoW, which is violence, right? But since then, we've seen further evolutions of, what has happened since, from getting really into glyphs to abandoning glyphs and changing glyphs into all the different borrowed powers that we've seen over the past several expansions, to what we've seen in Shadowlands with a big push for not so much combat-based stuff, more like evergreen things. If you think about it, and you really got to think about it, because I think it's hard to look past the whole combat side of WoW. Covenants are an evergreen system it was designed to be evergreen. If you think back a little bit further to like Warfronts, that was to me that was kind of a cool experience, but it provided just gear. And at the moment, at least, it's hard to queue up for. You need to get a group. It's kind of a pain in the ass to get people together for. Horrific Visions, that was just kind of a one-patch thing. The Heart of Azeroth and the Azerite Essences, those are things that are, very much combat-based. And you need to go through kind of a pain in the ass grind just to make them feel sort of relevant, but they're not still because we've moved past that. Meanwhile, Legion artifacts, they're completely disabled, and basically, like new players can't go back to. They can't start off with Legion, they can't start BFA, and they're not going to have that same experience that we had at all. We don't know what's going to happen after Shadowlands, and I didn't predict this here. We don't know what's going to happen with Soulbinds and the Covenant abilities and things like that. We don't know if that's going to follow us at all, or if it's going to live just in the Shadowlands, just like the Heart of Azeroth only lives on Azeroth. But when it comes to covenants, that's something that, in the next expansion, several expansions from now, it's going to feel the same, apart from the anima grind. It's going to be a bit more trivial. It's going to be, but it's still going to be a pain in the ass because we still need to do all these world quests and things like that. And I hope, and part of me hopes that there are boosts, but part of me doesn't. But the Covenant activities, those are things that are designed to be evergreen. It doesn't matter if your level is like 60 or 129. If you go to Shadowlands and you pop your butt into the Path of Ascension, you become Pelagos, you become Mechanicos, you become Clea. You become something entirely different. It's evergreen in that sense. And it's designed that way from the ground up. The Ventir party stuff, very little to do with player power. You'll trivialize like mobs that spawn during the parties, but for the most part, you're doing something entirely different. And I'd like to tell myself, because hopium, whatever, all the PMs, that they're going to do something drastic again. It is unlikely that they're going to do player housing because covenants are one thing. Player housing is an entire game, pretty much. If they do go through with player housing in the next expansion, 1, I'd flip my shit. 2, I'd shave my head bald. But 3, there would be almost no new features. No new other features in the upcoming expansion aside from the bare minimum: raids, PvP, Mythic Plus, maybe a battleground and an arena, and that's about it. It's a risk that I'd love to see them take, and I want to, but I'm putting this one on the bingo card because I just have to. It's just part of my personality now. Moving on to number 8, Dragonflight. Is it going to be Dragonflight? Some folks doubt. Some folks are thinking, nah, man, that was just a red herring. That was just a fake thing that Blizzard, no way would they be dumb enough to put that thing into their HTML because they know we'd find it. So it's gotta be fake. It's gotta be a misdirect. My take on that is that if it was meant to be a misdirect, we would have known already. They would have said it already. Or if anything, it would have been more coy than this by just teasing the name. Like what they could have done or what they should have done if this was meant to be a joke is if, way deep in there's like some code thing, Dragonflight, and then there's like some site to go to, some other shit to decrypt and figure out and try to get deeper into. But once they get to the very bottom of that rabbit hole, they would have been like, wow, they went that far just to fuck us over. And that would have been hilarious. Absolutely hilarious. The fact that they didn't tells me, yeah, the thing's going to be called Dragonflight. I would be surprised if it wasn't. Wow, Dragonflight. I'd be surprised if the artwork that was that's been circulating around, if that wasn't real. Of course, we still know nothing about, we know next to nothing about what else is going on. For all we know, it's like, wow, Dragonflight, but Dragonflight is the name of the hotel that players are going to be running. And the expansion is going to be based on managing the Dragonflight Hotel. And we're hosting a bunch of dragons. And then it's just dragon parties all day. And one of the cooking recipes that we'll be able to make is called Dragonflight. 3 drinks. You make a drink, it comes in 3s, and we just get hella drunk. So it could be anything. The name, though, I'm pretty too obvious. Number 9, Profession Overhaul. A year or so ago, a while back, 50 years ago, I don't know how long it's been. Time doesn't mean anything anymore. There's a big push from like the jobs website over at Blizzard said, hey, we want a designer for professions. I applied. I didn't get it. I guess you should be happy about that. But there was a big thing about professions. And part of me was thinking, oh, is this going to have something to do with player housing? But probably not. Maybe, probably not. but it feels like if they were gonna hire one or several people on like a year or so ago, I have a feeling that it's been about a year. I think they're acclimated enough to really become contributors to whatever big profession thing might be happening. As for what, I don't know. I'm hoping that it's like, oh yeah, we're gonna hire you guys to bring back archaeology, which I'd love to have come back. It'd be great. It was to me, it was very missed. I would have loved to have dug for anima or something. I wouldn't have minded that at all. But as for like big overhauls, I would love to see like another big thing. As for what, I'm not entirely sure. I guess, you know, there were definitely some downsides to the way crafting went in Shadowlands. I guess my biggest thing is that I couldn't even craft a weapon. Like, bruh, I want to at least craft like not a green weapon, right? At least BFA, I was able to craft like some okay weapons and other pieces. You know, the exchange was you'll be able to make a lot of money. I guess that's what I'd like to see. I'd like to see the focus of WoW professions to not exactly lean away from just making money, but there's got to be like that needle's got to be moved a little bit to also make them fun and worthwhile too for people that aren't interested in money, but they just want to soak themselves into the role play of being an engineer, a blacksmith, a scribe, or whatever, to be able to celebrate that a little bit more than just, yep, I chose the profession that made that fat money, which they do. And I think they do it pretty well for people who are very focused on that. And I do strongly feel like Shadowlands did a good job of celebrating those sorts of players who are interested in just crafting and making oodles of gold and then doing whatever they want with it. I firmly believe, people hate me for this one, but I firmly believe in the rich merchant who will buy carries and will be like, hey, you mercs, you guys need gold for your consumables and all that. I got hella gold. Let's go. And the mercs are like, yeah, let's go. There's a mutual benefit to it. Gold is exchanging hands, and I think that's cool. But as for just being a profession, you know, I kind of remember a time where it did feel cool to be an engineer because we had like more than just wormholes to feel like we have cool toys. I got like this little wrist rocket thing that barely did any damage, but it felt hella cool to have. I had this belt thing that failed half the time and got me killed. But there were some cool things, whether it's toys like that or being able to pitch tents or make mounts and stuff like that. I feel like that was really lacking in Shadowlands, and the reasons why, I'm sure there are reasons why, but the expectation is there that I want to have an improvement. Someone in chat is saying having more than two main professions. I've been a big proponent of making it so that gathering professions, everyone can just learn to gather. Everybody can gather, and then let material costs compensate for that. But give everyone the chance to just see something on the ground and be like, I'm gonna pick that shit up. I don't need a skill level to grab things, but I do need a skill level to grab things well. So I do buy into the idea of having specialized gathering professions so they can get rare materials, more materials than your average person can get. But I'm also this is almost irrational, but I don't believe in being able to learn all the professions. Not like Final Fantasy. I don't believe in the genius who can learn all the professions. After going through that, like I felt good having leveled all of them up to whatever the max level, 80 at the time. I felt good leveling all of them up. But I didn't really come away like, I don't know. Part of me didn't come away feeling like great about it because I felt like that was expected. Like if you want to do professions, you might as well do them all. And I'm like, I don't know. Here, I feel like I have a bit more of an identity, but that's more of a personal thing And I think that the way WoW has done their professions by only learning 2 at a time and, you know, their restrictions, that it's very much, we just want it designed that way. You know, it defies logic, but it's one of those things where you don't really need logic to make that sort of decision. But anyway, still want an overhaul, still kind of expected to happen based on what we've seen. Number 10, alpha sooner than we think. So we're going to find out Tuesday what's going on. Last time when Shadowlands was announced, that was announced, you know, in November. Alpha didn't start until, crap, I don't remember off the top of my head. I think it was April. I want to think to myself that the alpha might start either almost immediately, which I doubt, but I think it may start like shortly after 925. So we are like almost a month into the 925 PTR cycle, which is an average of 3 months. So it could be in 2 months. That's not so bad. That's actually fair. That's actually reasonably quick for a timeline. But they could be even farther ahead. So we might get it sooner. I hope it's sooner. But I predict that it's going to be at least sooner than we think. And so far, I've done okay with predictions. I didn't expect a damn 925. I didn't expect a season 4, which is like a big bomb that dropped, and that bomb just blew up any chance of there being a 2022 release. I don't think it's going to be a 2022 release, but at least the alpha might be a little bit sooner than we wanted to. As for whether it benefits us or even Blizzard, I don't think so. I think I'm just talking about when it starts. I'm not counting on a longer alpha or a longer beta. Not exactly that. I think that they already have their timeline set for probably spring of 2023, give or take a couple weeks or a month or so. Number 11, new class. I think it's time. It's been 2 expansions, right? Third time's a charm. I think it's time for a new class. I don't know what though, because that's going to be based on not just the expansion name, Dragonflight, but it's going to depend on the theme. Remember, Dragonflight might be a hotel. Dragonflight might be the name of a spaceship. And we're going to have like a, you know, space rangers. Take that, leakers. It's like Dark Rangers. Yeah, blah, blah, blah. And then we find out Space Rangers. Oh boy. We are surprised. There have been a lot of predictions for the new class. Tinkers and Dark Rangers and Dragon Sworn. God. I remember one of the leaks saying Dragon Tamer, which sounds like awful. Because if there was a thing called a Dragon Tamer, then that would immediately make me think, okay, we're fighting dragons. We're killing them. We're fighting all the dragon flights. Might as well call it Dragon Fight. Yeah, because they're not going to be happy about that. I saw that thing, Evoker. Like that was from like some random. I think it was a random leak, and Ian Bates, he was fascinated by that just because it sounded different. I read nothing about it. I just kind of glanced at a tweet by him and I was like, yeah, fake leak, whatever. I'll wait until I see some leaks from a website or promotional thing or whatever. I do predict that there's going to be something new. One of them would be new class, and I'll probably I should mention some more as we get through this list. But new class is definitely within the realm of possibility. All it needs is a bit of a story, and that's it, really. One of the Dragonflight leak, fake leak that came out, asserted micro classes, which I think is a terrible idea in many different ways, including you're gonna have to make effects and animation movesets for 4 different classes. and that feels like a waste of resources. I feel like that would be much better. Let me go down to the next bullet point. I'll just put these both on. Specs added to existing classes. I think that's a smarter idea. Because then there could be different sorts, then we can like get a little bit more, we can liberate ourselves with some of these themes. I'm not sure if I mentioned class skins on here. I think I do, and I'll talk about that separately. But I can definitely see specs being added to existing classes. That sounds more, it sounds more reasonable, instead of splitting players into more classes. Because when I counting in WoW in this regard, I'm counting 36 specializations and not 12 classes. So I ask myself, okay, how many specializations do we want to add, and what does that entail compared to adding a class that happens to add new specializations? Because you got to add a whole bunch of other shit to that too, somehow, to replicate some sort of experience. Like, so what happened? Like, what happens when you have a new class, but they have no class sets? What is it that they collect? I feel like they'd be missing out on a lot of stuff in that case. And yeah, that part doesn't feel great. Adding specs to existing classes, especially adding roles. Ooh, that sounds hella fun. New roles for classes. Right now, clothies are very static in what they do. No melee cloth. What if there was melee cloth? What if there were male tanks? That'd be kind of cool. What if there are plate casters? As in pure casters, not just Shakadins or unholy death knights that just don't get into melee, and that's just bad. What if they had those? I think those are really cool concepts to explore. Almost more than a new class, unless, again, it makes sense and they figure out something cool. And I'd love to see some cool shit happen from that. Allied races or races. So the concept of allied race, the way that I see it, that was a very BFA specific sort of thing, where the races, they joined the Horde or Alliance for some mutual benefit, like survival, because they got dragged into the war and so on and so forth. I'm just talking about races here, where they join one of the factions for different reasons, or they are neutral. They're able to join either faction for whatever reason. And if they do introduce new races in this next expansion, I'm going to be very curious how it is that they're delivered and what their story is going to be. Because I think that's going to help set the premise for what's going to happen with cross-faction stuff in the future. Because 10.0 is going to launch with cross-faction instancing in mind. But how is the story going to play out? I have a feeling that, I guess I will make a light story prediction. I think that story-wise, it's not going to give a shit about the factions at all. It's not going to really put much of any focus on conflicts between the two factions. I mean, we kind of got away from that with Shadowlands because we just weren't, they just weren't around. Everything was shared. Here, we're back on Azeroth. There are those sorts of opportunities are there. But I just have a feeling, right? A feeling that we're not gonna really care about what the factions are, and whatever race that is introduced, if there is, and I think there will be one, they might serve as like kind of a bridge between the two factions, kind of like what Pandaren were supposed to do. Although it didn't quite turn out that way. For all we know, Pandaren might be very central to the story here, and if they do come in with greater prevalence, then I think we are gonna go further into the whole cross-faction idea. But I do definitely think we're going to see new races. Premise of allied races, that's based on wartime stuff, but just new races. Let's move on. A trust system. So I'll need to describe this. Not everyone has played Final Fantasy XIV. So in Final Fantasy XIV, they have a thing called the trust system, where you can queue up for a dungeon, or you walk into a dungeon. But before you walk in, you can talk to a couple of NPCs and be like, "Hey guys, let's party together." And you go into this dungeon with AI, by yourself. You're by yourself. You ain't with nobody, and the characters that are there with you, they kind of banter, they talk smack, whatever. But then you're just kind of progressing through a dungeon. Now, Final Fantasy XIV dungeons are they're designed very simply. It's very much a long hallway. There isn't so much of like, hey, line of sight this and do things like that. The combat in their duties are very simple. Boss fights are, and from there, the AI, they follow boss fight mechanics, which are very clear and easy to understand. WoW doesn't do that. It's very jazzy with the way they do their dungeons. There are packs all over the place. You can choose wrong ways to go. You can screw things up and all that. Oh, bad pull. Oh no. So that's a thing in WoW dungeons. They're just built very differently. And so a trust system wouldn't work the same way here. The way that I would see it, it would work more like a scenario. So I'd like to. This kind of alludes to what I was talking about earlier in the list when I talked about more solo content, because not everyone does dungeons, and we gotta respect that. I wouldn't mind seeing something where you go into a dungeon with certain NPCs, and I'll get into the NPCs in a little bit. But you go into a dungeon with them, and instead of like the full layout that we see in dungeons with the packs and all that stuff, that it's modified. It's modified to more like a scenario where if you are a tank, a healer, or a DPS, you do need to feel like you are tanking, healing, doing DPS. But the way mob packs are spread out, patrols, things like that, it's just a little bit more friendly. Just a little bit. It's modified, whatever. And I think that can possibly work. Now, there's like over 100 WoW dungeons. So I would say that this would be limited to the current. Yeah, it's kind of like what 14 did. It was limited to like the current expansion, and then later on they expanded it to like others. But I'd like to see a start of this here. And part of the fun with doing something like this, again, going back to more solo-based content, people who care about groups, they'll be like, "Oh, this is a fucking waste of time. This is stupid." So I'm gonna go to the next bullet point. Go ahead. The cool thing, the possible cool thing about this is that you can have like little story-based things that happen. So like, let's say we go into like Spires of Ascension, right? And the NPCs that we choose there are based on like whatever Covenant soulbinds that we have. And maybe that'll be like a big thing for Shadowlands. If, just using that as an example, your soulbinds are basically your party members, and you can choose which ones come with you, or maybe all of them come with you, plus some others like, story characters that happen to be part of that dungeon or whatever. And then they all just talk shit and do their thing. And at the end of it, maybe you'll get some gear, maybe you'll get some reputation with the NPCs that you chose to go with you into these dungeons. And as you wrap up with them, then maybe they give you gifts, and they're like, "Hey dude, thanks for running with me, man. And that was great. It was a great experience. Maybe you should go on, do this shit with your other adventurer friends too, because we're all dead people, right?" But then they give you things. They give you like little bits of gear and transmog and all that stuff. So you can have this very single player experience. It sounds horrifying, right? Why would you have this in an MMO? And to that I'd say, like, fuck, who cares? Like, just let them, give something for these people to do that just don't do dungeons the way that you wanted to. I would argue that doing a dungeon with AI NPCs would feel more fun than chasing a tank that's pulling half the instance for the sake of either parsing somehow, or just for the sake of like, getting shit done really quick because they got more important stuff to do. They're there to like farm a legendary memory or something like that. Meanwhile, these other people, they just want to have like a fun little dungeon romp, and they're not quite getting it. This is one way that they can do it. This might be terrible, but there are other games that do it. There's at least one other game that does it, people seem to be responsive to it. Maybe they got something. Maybe they have a point there. Because not everyone's because playing through it myself in 14, I was like, dude, this is so fucking slow. It was so slow. And since I stopped after reaching max level, I didn't do the whole, hey, I'm going to repeat these. I'm going to repeat dungeons so I can get them the wrap or whatever it is that they get, and then I get cool things out of it. But I can see a kind of flow to it. I mean, imagine if it went further than this. Imagine if it wasn't just like, preset NPCs. Imagine if they were like, it's kind of like the order hall or whatever, where you go into a tavern and then you recruit people to join your AI party. And then you go with them, they get gear, they get stronger. And the whole point of it is just for the fun of that. There might be some transmog and stuff at the end. Maybe a little bits of catch-up gear or whatever. But the whole point is, dude, I'm going to take these dudes on adventures, man. I mean, yeah, they're AIs and all that stuff, but there's a kind of coolness to that sort of thing. To me, it's my sort of vibe. So I'm obviously coming at this personally, but it'd be cool if I could like choose party members. Like I'm gonna take Johnny Awesome and Mancrick and Wilfred Fizzlebang and a healer. I don't know who my healer is. Liadrin, because Liadrin's hot. So she'll be my healer. And she'll be like, I don't fight in the back line. And I'm like, that's fine. You can just use Avenging Crusader and you can fight in the front. And she'll be like, all right, let's go. And we go to it. Yes, absolutely. Exile's Reach was that same thing. Now, it was very simple. It was very, very simple with its mechanics. You had the dragon at the very top. Hey, don't get tail swiped. Stand away from the breath and all that stuff. Whereas dungeons these days, even in normal mode, they become a lot more complex. But if Blizzard can pull that off, that would be fucking amazing. It'd be amazing if they can pull off that sort of experience in their dungeons. It'd be really cool. Be cool if you could take your alts. Oh, that'd be cool. But I also think to myself, okay, I would tank Soulgasm heals, and then I got Soul Humble, which is my warrior. I got Soul Popgun, which is a mage, and I guess Solid Snake, who is my hunter. All right, guys, let's go. You're so vain. I bet you think this song is about you. You're so vain. Remember, we're just trying to have fun here, all right? we're just chilling. We're vibing. Let's move on to number 15. Some sort of combat overhaul. God, I was so vague on this one. Combat overhaul. So by this, I'm talking about we're fucking around with the talent system again. I'm not talking about borrowed power necessarily. I'm talking about a fundamental like, ooh, we're doing this. Okay. So I'm talking about, something about talents. Even like adding another talent row, that would be kind of a big deal. My hope is that like they freaking add the Covenant abilities as a talent row, but I kind of doubt that too. But other combat overhauls that I'm thinking as well. Nope, I lost it. I don't know what I was thinking. Shit. There goes my momentum. That was my quick pause. I guess another thing that I mean by overhaul is, instead of, I guess trying to embrace the idea of a horizontal progression system. For those who aren't familiar, we're used to vertical progression, where you level up, you get stronger. You get gear, you get stronger. The next expansion comes out, we're supposed to get stronger. Borrowed powers, and and all that stuff. It gives us this kind of seesaw motion of what's going on. What I'd love to see as a big combat overhaul is instead of the talent, is to have talent rows, but instead of the talent rows like getting deeper, that they get wider instead. I talked about this numerous times, so I'm going to remind y'all. Right now we have 7 choices of talents, and they're all sort of categorized into like different things, whatever. But what I want to see is that over time we're able to make more selections horizontally, but we're still making the same number of choices vertically. So I think that's a fantastic way of being able to add more choices, add more things to do, but not add bloat. What it does do as kind of a risky thing is it threatens to create synergies that no one's ever thought of, and it would be up to the team to decide or to try to figure out what those edge cases are and try to make sure that they don't break their own game just because they're adding so many choices. Another way to look at it, and again, I've talked about this numerous times. For those who feel like this is a broken record, I'm sorry, but I believe in this so much, is that Diablo 3 did a really good job of being able to take an ability, sword swing ability, but adding these different runes to it. So you're still pressing that one button, sword swing, but now you can modify a sword swing with this sort of rune, and as you level up, you get this sort of rune and this sort of rune. And in the next expansion, which Diablo 3 got like 1, they added like another rune or something like that. So being able to add that way, again, you still have the same number of buttons, the same number of choices, but it expands still, because now you can create new synergies, new combinations, and players have those sorts of choices that they can make, to where it's like, okay, maybe the meta is to take the new expansion thing, but I'm really used to this sort of flow. I'm really used to how things were like from here, and so maybe the new abilities and whatnot, maybe they just don't add a damn thing, which you could say is a critique too. But it also preserves that sense of choice as well. And who knows, Blizzard could always rebalance things and be like, no, we want you to take the new thing, or we want you to at least try it out and make it into a thing. And then, several expansions from now, those sorts of choices, they're going to get more and more extensive. It's going to get more complicated. It's going to get messier for the team to handle, but that's up to them. That's their problem. Our problem is to just have fun with all these things. And so I'm not sympathetic to the WoW team to be like, oh, it's too hard. Oh, poor baby. They're big boys and girls. They can deal with it. I'm not going to try to defend them and say like, no, it's too hard, man. Forget it. I'll take the chaos and having to deal with that, because WoW is never going to be a perfectly balanced game anyway. Let's have fun. Next, class skins. I don't think this is going to be a thing, so I should say not class skins. I think they're a risky. They're kind of a risky idea. Now, when it comes to, I guess I should define what I mean by class skins. By class skins, I'm talking about, let's pretend, an easy class skin, a doable one, would be Dark Rangers. You are still a Beastmaster, you're still a Marksman, or actually maybe I'll take that back. Maybe it applies only to Marksman. I don't think it should, but what it would do is take your abilities and just give them a different look and feel. No. Let me take that back. A different look. Just a different look. That's it. So, rapid fire will be like dark rapid fire. I'm so imaginative here. Kill command is dark kill command. Something, or maybe that won't change because it's kill command, whatever. My idea of class skins are just taking some abilities and giving it a different theme, a different visual look. Some folks are going as, some folks are talking about class skins as something that just kind of totally redefines that class. And I don't buy into that, because in order to make for a class skin to really work, it still needs to translate the same way, because what you don't want is to make the class feel different at all. Like, imagine if, like, let's go back to the hunter example, a marksman hunter versus a dark ranger marksman hunter. If the animation is any different, like, for example, projectile travel time, or hitboxes, or visual effects that might be brighter or darker or harder to see, that's a big no-no. You don't want to have that, because then people are going to make their choice based on performance, when the choice should only be with the theme. I guess a better example would be like paladins. I'm totally cool with Blood Knights, because we pretty much we kind of had something like that a little bit before. Apart from Seal of Blood, that's gonna have to, that would need to that changed after a while, but you know what I mean. Void Knights, probably same thing. I'd be mostly okay with that sort of stuff, as long as it is just a visual change. I don't even want the skill names to be different, to be honest, because I think that would be confusing for people. It's like, okay, if I wanted to put on this skin, then I'm going to be talking about different abilities, different ability names. And while from kind of a roleplay standpoint, that makes sense, from a conversational standpoint, it'd be hella confusing. Because imagine there's like a new player comes in, and let's just pretend that these class skins are available fairly early on, or maybe not even that much early on. Like, you get to max level, you get the skin, cool, whatever. And then that player is going to be so used to it, they're going to, like, if Judgment was given a different name, a very different name, then that's going to, the way I see it, that would confuse folks when it comes to just conversing about games. And I feel like there should be like kind of a universal language when people are in conversations about the game that they play. It shouldn't be different just because they chose like a certain class skin. That's kind of my, to me, that's a big deal. It's not for everybody, because some folks are like, I don't care, I just want my Dark Ranger. I get it. I totally get it. But I don't see class skins being something that's going to be like a huge overhaul, because it'd also be a shitload of work. Making class skins and the work that goes into that, it's not so far from making a new class. So do we want the team to make a new class without really making a new class? I'm thinking probably not. But I do see small things, small visual effects, stuff like that. Nothing huge. And by small, I'm talking about, hey, you know how we can make Dark Warrior, Night Warrior sort of things like that? Cool. Now we have new customizations. So I can see that. I can see race customizations being based on like certain different things. So like if you want to create that sort of look, you can, but you just still happen to be a hunter and you're still using kill command and kill shot and all that stuff. 17. Capitals for Night Elves, Worgen, and Undead. Actually, let me rephrase that again. No capitals for Night Elves, Worgen, and Undead. This has a premise. This has a condition. Like, if the next expansion has a pretty big focus on redeveloping old world content and involving old world content, then yes, I can see one of these capitals or more being restored. If we're going to travel to a new land, though, and our leveling and end game is going to be focused on that new land, nope, we're not going to see something like this. Now, I know that we've seen that folks have talked about data mine stuff and little strings and maps and whatnot here and there, but we're still kind of a ways away from the 10.0 launch. There's still a 9.25 that could include who knows what, and so this could back up the possibility of this. Or it just might be something not too different from how Ice Crown, they added a bunch of NPCs and stuff for the pre-patch event, and they're just starting to stage that sort of stuff there now for the pre-patch. Who knows? So I'm very skeptic of them suddenly like restoring like some of these capitals. I mean, fulfillment demands it, right? BFA, bunch of folks lost, like these folks lost their homes for the longest time. Draenei and Blood Elf players have been bitching that they want to be able to actually fly to their capitals and fly around their cities and, you know, and get some significant updates there. But there would need to be actual reasons for that as well. So if the zones are involved, great. If not, not so great. But there's so much talk about Dragon Isles this, Dragon Isles that it's hard to see this happening. Capitals are a big deal. Capitals are a lot to rebuild and reform and set up and all that stuff. And so I asked myself, like, depending on how much focus is going to be there, how, you know, what should that work be put in there? Or are we going to go to the Dragon Isles and there's going to be like fucking Dalaran again? Or are we going to go to like this other hub? Because if we are, then everyone's going to be there. No one's going to be here. So we'll have to see. Next one, Timewalking overhaul. I should say Timewalking / level sync overhaul, but I think that might be too much for a bingo box. A lot of folks, ever since Legion Timewalking joined the discussion, a lot of folks were like, dude, just have Timewalking on all the time. Make it on all the time. Stop making it an event, or if anything, just make it like an always around thing. And then when Timewalking is in, then we get extra stuff. You know, something like that. And that doesn't sound so unreasonable. I'd love for them to do something with Timewalking though. Whether it is like right now, they only, I think it was 915, or was it 9.2? They only recently shortened the gap between Timewalking events from 4 weeks to 3 weeks, which is cool, which isn't so bad, but it's still kind of bad. I'd love for that to be shorter, but of course, folks are like, hey, we want Timewalking everything, and we want it on all the time. And WoW has made for themselves kind of like a lot of trouble because they have a thing called Timewalking, and they have a thing called level sync. Timewalking right now, this is going to sound confusing because it is. Timewalking is a thing that exists from levels 50 to 60. Level sync is something that exists from level 1 to 60. And I'm talking about dungeons here. Timewalking dungeons exist. Level sync dungeons exist, but level sync queuing up does not exist. And I think that's got to get cleaned up. So it's Timewalking plus a dungeon overhaul, a dungeon queuing overhaul. Something there needs to just get fixed. The only way to do that, though, in a not so messy way, I'm sorry again, is if they want to make Timewalking on all the time, like that's one thing. But I think the better vision that I have for WoW is to have it so that if I want to queue up for a dungeon, or if multiple people who are leveling want to queue up for dungeons, then people who happen to be of a higher level, they're going to need to get synced down, and they're going to need to basically lose their levels temporarily, lose access to those abilities, because otherwise it creates this very like awful experience where you have like you're in Ragefire Chasm, you have a tank that's low level, that barely knows how to taunt, that barely has like the toolkit. Meanwhile, you got like a level 60 person who's synced down, but they have all of their abilities and their covenant abilities and yada yada yada, and they're just like destroying the place. And I feel strongly that that's not a good experience. That's why we don't have that. Strictly because that low level tank or whoever is just having a terrible time because they're like, dude, am I even playing the game? I don't feel like a tank. I don't feel like I'm, committing to my particular role. And that's a tough thing to solve. Obviously, not everyone. There's a lot of folks that are like, no, I don't want to lose my abilities. Otherwise, I'm just not going to run these dungeons, or I'm not gonna do those things. But I feel strongly that would be the direction that things would need to go. As going back to Timewalking though, because that's the original subject here. I think frequency would be the thing that I would want to focus on most, because as for the use of Timewalking, Timewalking, just like other dungeons, are something that you graduate from. Eventually you stop doing them because, I already have like a bunch of like raid gear. I don't need to do these things. Some folks don't. Some folks, they're not that much into end game stuff, but Timewalking is part of what they do. I think I'd love to see just like more events be active at once. So like, what if they we've seen them activate both Wrath of the Lich King and Legion and Burning Crusade Timewalking across the month of December. When Legion Timewalking first came out, it was there for like a month, and so we had 2 Timewalking events at the same time, and it worked. So I wouldn't mind seeing a little overhaul where it just says Timewalking, and then there's multiple expansions that we can jump into. So maybe there's a compromise to be had. I know that folks are asking for all of it, but if there can be a compromise where we take that needle and kind of slide it a little bit, I think that'd be cool. Moving on to number 19, a Covenant vibe. So by Covenant vibe, I mean, kind of the same thing that we had in Shadowlands. So if we're getting dragons, and if we're getting Dragonflight, and there are multiple Dragonflights, then are we going to get multiple Dragonflights that we can sign up with and get some powers and help out their dragon lair and power up their dragon sanctum and do all that stuff? I want that. This goes back to some of the solo content that I was talking about. I want 915's covenants here in Dragon whatever. Subtract the covenant abilities though. And that's it. Give me actually the signature abilities aren't so bad either. Fleshcraft was okay, maybe not even the signature abilities, but give me a chance to like sign up with some dudes and get like all sort and have like some separate activities, things to help me rep my covenant thing, my dragon covenant thing, and don't make me feel bad about the choice I made. I don't want Icy Veins or whatever to be like, so let's talk about how you need to switch to this thing to like optimize your thing. No, fuck that. I don't want that. I want it because I want to look cool. That's it. So that's what I mean by the covenant vibe. I do feel like 91592, it did a much better job of handling that, despite having the covenant power to wrangle. Because it just gave people a lot to do. It gave lots of separation of like different storylines and perspectives that otherwise some people wouldn't experience. Like I think it was I was doing some stuff for the Necrolords recently, and I again went back to Azeroth to do stuff. And and it still amazes me how some folks are still, for the longest time they were like, hey, time flows differently, blah blah blah. And I'm like, dude, all these different things that we're doing, we're going back to Azeroth for this and this and this. Like, why are you guys still thinking this? Have you guys even played the game? And they probably didn't, because they're because they quit or whatever reason. But I think the Covenant Sanctums were like a huge win, despite what That dude in all caps. No, God, please, God, no. Yeah. I'm convinced. I've convinced myself that they're going to do something like that. But I do feel like they learned that they probably learned from, from Shadowlands that having a Covenant ability, which is cool. Let's take those efforts and do something else that's cool and accessible with them. Something that can be freely swapped, whatever. Because that was a lot of stuff that they added. They added, 30-something odd unique abilities between... Yeah. They added a bunch of abilities, right? Not everyone uses all these abilities. So I'd love to see those efforts be put into something else that people can just freely switch back and forth between. In the meantime, as for the cosmetics, I want to be able to do whatever I want, including everything. That way I can experience all the storylines and go through all the quests, and I still haven't done it all. And I find it really cool that I'm getting those sorts of opportunities, at the tail end of the expansion. There's still 9.0 stuff for me to do, and I've been playing fairly consistently. So I think that's a great takeaway, a great long-term investment for WoW. Number 20, a serious plot premise. I think I have a 21 too. Nope, I don't. I should say not serious plot premise. I think it's going to start off, at least the cinematic or whatnot. We're not going to feel like immediate danger. The sky is not literally breaking. God, what was it? It was Legion. The sky was falling because infernals and stuff. BFA was a straight up battle. Legion was the sky breaking. I like the sky. You know what I almost predict is that, based on just that premise alone, or kind of that thread of thought, the cinematic that we see, it's going to kind of start off at some point. We're going to see a peaceful sky, a very peaceful sky, non-ironic, because it's going to try to start off with a calm vibe. That's my hope. Most everything that we've seen had some element of violence to it, including Miss Pandaria. Although that felt like almost whimsical in nature as that particular cinematic went on. But I think that we're going to start off with it not being serious. It's going to start off with, pretending Dragonflight and Dragon Isles and stuff. Rathian's going to be like, hey, dude, I found it. You want to go? I'm not doing anything right now. Is there Azerite bleeding from the land? No, not really. Okay, yeah, let's go. Does my Heart of Azeroth work on the Dragon Isles? Nope. Okay, fuck. Well, I guess. Let's go. That's it. Yeah, so I don't see it being like a super serious sort of thing. By the time we get to 10.2, though, who knows? 21, a group system overhaul. I guess I was talking about this already with Timewalking and that sort of stuff. But I guess I'll get into this a little bit more. A group system overhaul. So this could include queuing up for Mythic Zeros, which I believe in. It sounds a little superfluous at this point, seeing a normal dungeon. There's dungeons when you're leveling, and then there's regular dungeons, which I guess scale anyway, and then there's heroic dungeons, and then there's mythic dungeons, or Mythic Zeros, I should say. Big difference between heroic dungeons and mythic dungeons would be that mythic dungeons, at least if they do happen to preserve the whole mythic upgrade system, is that you get a rank 1 mythic gear. Part of me almost thinks that they should just remove heroic dungeons and instead, just call it or maybe instead of Mythic Zeros, they just call it heroic. That's it. Is that so bad? Because I'm trying to think mechanically, what's the difference between just max level dungeons and heroic dungeons? And I think mechanically things don't change. It's when you get into mythic that mechanics change a little bit. So maybe mythic dungeons can be it. Maybe it can be the new bar. I wouldn't mind that. I wouldn't mind that. Right? Everyone's gonna have like a specific thing to it. But yeah, why can't Mythic Zeros just be like the new heroics? Meh. And then you can queue up for them. Simple. So simple. And then you get rank 1 gear and you get a keystone. To be like, hey, poke, poke, poke. You want to do it? You want to do this dungeon? And they're like, nope. Delete. You cannot delete this item. Like, fuck. But that'd be kind of cool. Like, I'm not gonna have anything concrete to say on this specifically, but folks have been talking about a deserter mode. That's been a big thing. And in solo shuffle, if you happen to leave, you get a different sort of deserter debuff. Where if you continue to leave solo shuffle games consecutively, then it's just gonna that deserter debuff gets worse and worse and worse. Part of me wants to think that, if you happen to leave a key early, I'm not quite sure how we would. I'm not quite sure how the mechanics of that would work. But if you happen to like hearth out or leave group or earlier or whatever, then people will get like a 15-minute penalty that they can't go into. They can't activate a key. They can't be a part of the thing that activates a key. But if you do that consecutively over the course of like a day or a week or something like that, that deserter debuff gets longer and longer and longer. I don't know. But there are a lot of ideas for that. But I think that they're going to... I think they'll talk about this. And maybe they'll bring something up about group. Maybe not in the initial announcement, but possibly in like interviews that may come after, if they're going to come after. Maybe. Moving on to 22. Personal and master loot changes. Yesterday, what my guild was bitching about this, that basically they were like, fuck with it. Someone was saying, hey, the reason why master loot personal things are like this is because top raiders are like blah blah blah. Because of top raiders, because of what they do. Maybe I'll put this on the weekly, but I replied to that saying, no, it's not the top raiders. It's not them that Blizzard is trying to address with these personal and master loot things and all that stuff. That's not the reason. That's not the target. What they're trying to target is the toxicity from those people who are trying to be top raiders, the wannabes, the pretenders, the posers, the tryhards. That's where you see, I think, the most toxicity. Like you see, like elitism starts from the top, obviously, but the toxicity is really like the folks that are trying to break into that top level sort of thing, who are going to be like, hey, what's up, trial? You don't even have a name. You're just trial number 6. You're not going to get any gear. We're going to see how your shit goes. You better parse above such and such. Otherwise, you're out. By the way, whatever gear you get, we get whatever gear that drops. You don't get shit. You got to earn it. Earn your spot. Number 6, bitch. That sort of toxicity does exist. And it's not as visible as like the top raiders because, as top raid teams, because those top raid teams, people be like, I don't want to join them. These guys are fucking animals. Jesus. So, that I think is that what it addresses. However, like the way these personal trading restrictions are, especially with tier, when they added that in, like there was a lot of pushback about the rules and how that worked. And, my guild gets frustrated because we want to help people. If we happen to see an upgrade if we happen to get a piece of gear that's technically an upgrade for us, but we want to help someone else, we can't do it. That sucks. That doesn't feel right. That doesn't feel very very MMO. It doesn't feel very roleplay either. Because I want to help someone. Why can't I? Oh, because they're jackasses out there. I get it. I totally get it. But I also feel like there's a certain control that we as players should still have. It's still a social game. We can't let the game just play loot distribution for us. There's a line that has been crossed. And so far Blizzard has refused to like walk back on that. But I really think they should. The problems that they solve should be centered on, yeah, I'm being selfish here. The problems that they're trying to solve should be centered on like my situation where we are just trying to help people out. There's got to be a way to prevent people from becoming assholes, but there's going to be assholes anyway. We for all that the WoW team has done to curb that, still assholes. So why not just walk that back a little bit, give some of that control back, and let some of those folks be happy. 23. A legacy loot overhaul. Again, going back to solo play. I really feel like with so much different kinds of content in WoW, it becomes that much. It feels that much more overwhelming when someone is finally able to get access to like a brand new expansion's worth of stuff because it's entered legacy loot mode. But it's still kind of a pain in the ass to farm. I still go back to the whole thing on farming Legion stuff, legacy content and Legion raids, and getting nothing but relics. Like, wow, thanks, Blizzard. So I've longed for the whole notion of, hey, can we just not have those things drop when you're in legacy loot mode anymore? Because if I'm in legacy loot mode, I out level everything, so I'm not going to be using rings and all that stuff outside of Timewalking. And so thanks to Legion Timewalking and the Mage Tower and stuff, I'm forced to kind of walk myself back on that one. I still don't like relics. So I wouldn't mind just seeing those disappear, because those are freaking pointless. But another thing that I would love to see, and I'll keep championing this, I want to see, like, if you're in legacy loot mode, that should not count towards the weekly lockout. Either remove the lockout entirely, or reduce it to like a day, or an hour, or something like that. That way I can just, if I'm on break from raiding or something like that, I want to be able to just binge and farm a whole bunch of dungeons. And it ought to respect the idea that I want to do this on just one character. I don't want to feel like, oh, okay, so Paladin didn't get it. Let me work on my other 4 plate wearers just so I can farm this instance, just so I can get this transmog that I want to wear. That doesn't feel right. I feel like it'd be better. I feel like I'd be better off just being able to refresh the instance as soon as I'm done. This at the risk of scope creep, they could say something like, "Oh, you can't. You can do a reset of this instance. You can't do a reset of this instance unless you either wait for 24 hours or you defeat the last boss. Because otherwise people will just kind of farm like the first boss or something like that and then reset and then go back in. But I don't even think that's so bad either. If people want to just farm for that one horse in Karazhan, early Karazhan, Nightmare, or I forgot its name. If they want to farm that thing and just that thing over and over again until they get it, cool, let them get it. Let them get it. Because you know what they're going to do? They're going to move on to the next thing. And they're going to keep going. Because, I'm going to start with the low-hanging fruit, get the easy stuff, and then I will go back in and get the harder stuff, knowing that I can just kind of keep going and going and going in. Because you got to think about not just the short term, as in, hey, I'm just going to get this easy stuff and reset the instances a whole bunch of times. You got to think about the long term too, because eventually they're not going to have that low hanging fruit to farm for anymore. They're going to end up going for fucking invincible. each time, and so they're gonna do whatever shenanigans that they can do to farm that thing as well, or that the mounts from Deathwing that some folks still, yeah, like Lily, like she's still trying to get that shit. So why not lift those sorts of restrictions? They're still putting in the work. I could see the cynicism that comes from people being like, no, but then if they still have the weekly lockouts, then that extends their playtime. I'm so smart for thinking of that. The whole idea, though, is to just let them move on to the next thing, too. Because WoW's a big game. It's a big effing game. Give folks more time to... give folks more opportunities to farm for that stuff. I think that'd be fun. And then the final point that I have is... it would be at the bottom. A new feature for pets. There were pet battle dungeons in the BFA. They stopped doing it in Shadowlands. There was word that pet battle dungeons weren't really taking off. I wouldn't mind I'd love to see like something else for pets. So, something to do with them rather than just send them out to, rather than fight with them. You know what I'd love to see? This is going to sound terrible. You know how we had the mission table, garrison mission table and all that stuff? I want to have a pet mission table. Send out pets to like just do shit. Which sounds kind of horrifying because can they really think for themselves? I don't know. But that'd be kind of cool. Sending out pets to like do stuff. And then they get, I mean, it sounds soft because pets are like really easy to level these days. But I think it'd be cool to be able to like send those dudes out. You get some shit for it. Yeah, that's like the first thing that comes to mind. But then there's other things too. I think someone's mentioning it that there's going to be a WoW mobile game, a Warcraft mobile game that might be based on World of Warcraft. Pets might have something to do with it. That'd be a lot of fun. I don't know, but I'd like to see something because right now all they do is all that I do is grow my pet collection, and that's it. That doesn't feel like enough. Have my pets come with me during like, AI dungeons and stuff, and they can all, we can all mob shit together. Like have like 2 or 3 pets with me, and they all like have some effects. Those things would be like fun little things. But pets have definitely been a more neglected thing. I mean, we get lots of pets, which is great. Some of them have new abilities. Some of them are overpowered. So, someone is developing more pets and pet abilities, but functionality with them, just things to do with them. I think that'd be a lot of fun. That would lend to just giving WoW a little bit more texture beyond, hey, I got Keystone Hero. F yeah, dude. I got best in slot. WoW is so much more than that. And I want to see the game show it, not just kind of let me lament over those sorts of things. So that's my list. 24 something or others, and most of these, if not all of them, are going to be on a bingo card that I'll make available next week for fun, and we'll find out how wrong I am about all this stuff. But what are some of your predictions? These are all the predictions that I was able to come up with over the course of, observing all these different conversations and listening and watching you all. And this was a lot of fun to talk about. So I would love it if you were to share some of your own predictions in a comment below. Of course, like and subscribe to help out the channel. And we will be live. I'm going to be on a little bit early on Tuesday, like an hour or so before the actual thing starts. We'll watch, we'll react, we will talk smack. We'll see what happens. And I hope to share that moment with you because it should be a lot of fun. So I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you guys for the next thing. Until then, stay safe, stay healthy, and stay breezy.